You're listening to Unfiltered, real talk about sex and love with Ashley
and Heather. And today we are wrapping up part 2 of our episode on parenting while in recovery. And so if you had a chance to listen to the episode before this, part 1, hopefully you gained some insights. But we just felt like this topic really is so broad and there's so much out there that this one it needed 2 parts.
Yeah, and I can feel, we do this. We're kind of mixing, like whether you're the person recovering from addiction or betrayal. Mm-hmm. We've kind of touched on a little bit of both with all of these questions because it can be overlapping. It can be some of the same struggles, whether you're the betrayed spouse or the addict spouse. So we touched on a little bit. I wanted to say when we recorded our episode on sex and the single person, mm-hmm. sex and being single, I wanted to say, you have such an opportunity to help other children and other people when you have health in your own story. And the reason why I'm thinking of that is because our first question on this parenting while in recovery episode is, as a parent in recovery, how do I start the conversation about sexual health with my kids? This does not have to be just your kids. When you're sexually healthy as a Christian, you don't know what kind of opportunities you're going to have to help other people. I have an appointment to go have a day date with my second mom, growing up, and she was just always there and she was free to talk about anything. And I love her to pieces. And so when we talk about parenting or being single or, helping in the church, just being equipped and prepared as a healthy human being mm-hmm. who has worked through your shame story and dismantled shame, you're going to be set up to help other people as they come along. And so why I think of this is my kids, I have 4 of them, and currently the twins are in their 20s, Ayla's 14 and Waylon's 12. I just gently encouraged and nagged and bugged my husband to start going through a sexual health where you start the conversation with your young boy as a dad. It's called Father-Son Accountability. It's by John Fort, who works at Be Broken Ministries. And I love this little resource he created for dads and sons because it's not a lot of the tools or heavy biblical, clinical things. It's let's just create a space and have a guide so that we talk each week and start creating that conversation, because as parents, it can be really hard to start those conversations. So having just a resource where you're like, all I have to do is commit to the time. And he made it short. So it's like 10 minutes, and my son will go through that with my husband. My daughter wants to ask me things on her terms. And so she will say, Mom, what's oral sex? Or is it normal to have hair on your vagina? And she'll just ask me things randomly. Mm-hmm. But if I say, we should go through this research, no, yuck. And so it's like, I have to just let it come as it comes. But I will tell you, I have a history of being the cool mom with the friends. I am always the cool mom. I'm always really nice. I buy those kids whatever they want. I am just really the cool mom when it comes to the friends. And so I use that to my advantage. And I go into the girls' room because I'm currently working on a book for moms and daughters. And I go into the room and I say, girls, there was 3 of them there besides Ayla. I said, I'm working on a book for moms and daughters, and I need teenage stories and perspective on some of the things I'm writing. Ayla won't sit down and do this with me, so can I buy you guys a gift card and take you on a little date and ask you these things if I get your parents' permission? They're like, we have so many stories to tell you from middle school, and we want to do this so bad. And Ayla's like, well, you guys can't do this with my mom without me. So now I have it on the calendar, all 4 girls. Mm-hmm. And this is my strategy with Ayla. And it was my strategy with the twins because the twins were the same way. They were coming out of some of that trauma from all of their parents. There really were more than 2. Their biological dad, their stepdad, and myself, of being addicts, going through struggles. And so we didn't start that at a young age. And so I had to do some back work with them. And when they were 14 or 15, I would do sexual health nights, and I showed them the Fight the New Drug Brain Heart World series. I'd order them pizza, get their parents' permission, and my kids' friends always would talk to me, and they were asking the right questions, and then my sons were hearing the information, and later I would hear my sons repeat the information that they learned. So I knew this was a good strategy, and I've used it before, so then I used it on Ayla. And so I would just say, it is uncomfortable to start these conversations. I mean, for most of us, it is. It's uncomfortable to talk to your kids about sex, and because they don't want to all the time, and most of the time. And so, just be having this regular conversation, and we have resources. I've listed a few where you can educate yourself, and then you can organically sprinkle in the information to your kids when it comes up, or do something more organized like I did, where you have a night and you start talking about sexual health, because then it's not abnormal when you go to them. It's not as much of a shock when you go to them and say, hey, I actually have struggled with pornography and I want to talk to you about that, or anything else that you want to talk with your kids about, because you're already starting that conversation in your house already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is one of the things that a lot of parents struggle with, is like, how soon, what age should I start this conversation? What does this look like? What if I give them too much information? Right. You know what I mean? It's constant. So Pure Desire is actually working on a parent training course for really just to handle this, to equip parents to not only start the conversation, but create an environment where this is an ongoing, continual conversation. And it really is, I think, sometimes because parents don't have the right information, and so they kind of don't know where to start. Right. And so with this new parent training course that we have coming out this year, I think that it really will benefit and equip parents to know that this is what it could look like for you and your kids. Just starting the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be really helpful.
Yeah. And I think as far as, we'll have the parenting course out. We have resources. I've listed a few already that will be in the show notes. But if you can at least just remember to share some of the things that you were struggling with or you were exposed to at their age, if you can at least do that, like I've told my kids, I've told my daughter, hey, at 9 years old, I started becoming really sexually curious because of things I saw on movies. And so this is why I want to make sure that you're aware that these things can happen. And this is why I really keep an eye on you guys. And I might not let you spend the night at people's houses. And, this is why I have some of these rules. And it wasn't even the next week that she told me she had an experience like that, so that we have to be sharing that, because if our kids, for most of us, we grew up and we didn't hear any of this. Right. We heard nothing about sexual relational struggles from our parents ever. And so that is just so freeing to your kid to say, I would imagine with phone use that it would be really easy to just see something sexual. And, when you run across something sexual on your phone or your computer or your TV, here's a couple strategies of what you can do. Don't even say if, because your kids will run across something, even just driving down the street, that when this happens, this is how you should respond, so that they kind of can mentally rehearse it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Our second question asks, is there anything about a teen brain that is different from an adult when it comes to struggling sexually or emotionally? And yes, absolutely. There's a huge difference. All the things. So for teenagers specifically, and I think that the reconstruction phase, when you look at it, look at the developmental age range, is between 12 and 24, when teenagers, their brain goes through this major reconstruction, because it's basically going to transform their brain into a kid brain so that it can function like an adult brain. And so it's really quite fascinating. But part of that process is happening because their prefrontal cortex is not yet developed yet. And so they will be very emotional. They will not necessarily have a fear factor. They will, because their executive functioning, their, logic and reason and self-control, all of that comes from their prefrontal cortex. And because that's not working right, then everything that they're exposed to sexually is going to just be ramped up. It's almost like, one of the best analogies I've ever heard is that a teen brain is kind of like a race car, that the gas pedal is their limbic system, right, which is fully functional by the time they're 6 years old. And it's where they create all of their emotion, and lots of dopamine runs through there. So they have this very functional gas pedal, but their braking system, their prefrontal cortex, isn't even engaged. And so it really does, I think, give a really clear picture of the teen brain and why it is so important that we recognize this as parents, that we have grace for our kids, because they are going to do a lot of things that don't make sense to us. And a lot of times we end up treating them like they're an adult because they look like an adult, but they really do have a baby brain that is under construction and will be until at least their mid-20s, if not, some research says as late as like 28 and 30. And so, I mean, I think that is really quite telling, that that as parents, not only being able to give them grace, but to also equip them to say, you know what, you're going to come across stuff on the internet and your brain is going to go crazy for this, and you're going to think it's the greatest thing ever. But then they're also going to have these the emotion of shame and guilt and embarrassment, and so just really being able to tell them, say, you know what, I know what that experience is like. I experienced pornography when I was a teenager, and so when this happens, come and talk to me, because I can help you. I can help you navigate that, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. And how, like, exactly what you just said, if you're a parent that can say that, like, when this happens, come and talk to me, because I remember how that felt. And it might feel intriguing and exciting and arousing at the same time as shame and disappointment in yourself or whatever. That's such a different experience than the experience we hear from some of our people who come in, our men and women, that say, my mom caught me looking at porn and her reaction was so devastating.
Right.
I just felt terrible for the next 10 years. Like, I let my mom down and I was disgusting and I wasn't her little boy anymore. And so it can be just such a make it or break it, how we respond with our kids. Right. I remember, of course, my teenagers were going through their changing brain, and you were telling me not to tell them they were stupid or ask, why would you do that? Because I kept hearing you going, they really don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
And so I would say, okay, John, we can't ask them, why would you do that? We can't say that anymore. We're not allowed to say that anymore. We just changed some of our language. And then, of course, I had like 5 books I was reading on the teenage brain and the male brain and no drama discipline and all these brain books, which it really did bring more understanding to say their brains are going haywire right now, and they're trying to create their freeways and figure out what's, going to be their routine and what's normal. And so even with that, when my boys didn't want boundaries as teenagers, I would say, your brain's still developing, and it's my job as your parent to kind of be your surrogate brain right now and make sure that my adult brain is helping you decide what's safe. And it reminds me of your kids wanting to snowboard off the roof story. Oh
my gosh.
That we have to help keep you safe.
Right.
Because you are a Ferrari with no brakes. All right. So the next question is, how can I help my kids who struggle? Not just boys, but girls struggle too. And so I like some of the language you just used. And hey, I remember looking at pornography. Maybe we didn't have this, cell phones. It might have been dial-up, or it might have been magazines under the bridge by the swimming pool. That was my experience. Or it might have been fast-forwarding the rated R movies to the sex scene, or, whatever it was back in our day. But we do remember being exposed to sexual content and having those mixed feelings. And so just telling them that ahead of time, hey, when this happens, age appropriately share, like, hey, when I was 15, I remember that, boys really started to want to push the boundaries with me. And so, if this happens to you, you don't have to feel embarrassed. Even if you end up crossing the line with one of them, you can feel free to come and talk with me. And then having that conversation with boys and girls. So with girls, you want to say, hey, when you're exposed to pornography, you can come talk to me about that. And I did that with Ayla, and she sure did let me know. She's like, so-and-so was trying to show me gay porn, and I told him I am praying for him and he needs to knock it off. And she's like, and I'm on the phone with him right now, so what else should I say? Like, she was calling me real time. I was like, tell him. I was like, tell him he's not bad, but what he did was a bad choice, and that he shouldn't, and that I still love him, and that, and so she's, telling me real time, because I had already prepared her, for, you're going to be exposed to this, so that when it happened, it wasn't this big shameful thing, but it was like, I need to SOS, I need to call my mom and know what to say to this kid. And then the other thing is not just their sexual struggles, but pain and shame around sexuality. And so one thing I think of is one of my kids, I'm not going to say who, because I don't want to call out this friend, but one of my kids' family members is currently having affairs. And my friend, my kid's friend, I'm going to be like they, them. So don't give away the gender. But one of my friends, this is what my child said. One of my friend's parents is having an affair, and they told the other parent, and now they are not being talked to. They're being treated badly because they were the ones that exposed this. And I comforted, and, all the pure desire language of, this is not your fault. And I'm sure that you might be feeling confused or maybe regret or, anger, that these are all things that betrayal even, a lack of protection from the people who are supposed to be protecting you and providing for you. And so I'm having this conversation with this friend, and fast forward a few weeks, my kid came and talked about the same friend again, and was like, they just feel really sad, like they don't have a normal family, they don't have that normal mom and dad relationship where, and they really like being at our house because you let them talk about that stuff and you talk about that. And I was like, I don't know if you're just trying to manipulate me for a sleepover, but it's working. Invite him over. But just, it's not always sexual struggles that we go through. It's experiences that hold shame and secrecy, which we know ends up leading to other things. Like I remember feeling some of those same things coming from a very broken home, of feeling like I was just kind of like the loser kid without the normal family, and wanting to be part of other people, searching for belonging. And then once I got to the age of kind of like sexual awakening, I started searching for it in men rather than other friends and their families. And so all of that contributes to the way we behave in relationship. And we just have such opportunities as parents and adults to navigate our own brokenness, dismantle the shame that we carry, educate ourselves on what teenagers are going through, educate ourselves on the brokenness of sexuality, and just be there for people. I mean, if you can just be a safe person to talk to, that goes so far.
Yeah. I know in some of the parenting curriculum that I have taught, I'll make that comparison, about, like, I remember when my kid was 5 years old and he would do something stupid, and I would say, oh, buddy, you look like you're struggling. Let me help you with that. And then when my 15-year-old would do it, we really need to use the same language, is to say, you know what? I can see that you're really struggling. Is there anything I can do for you? You know, instead of it being something that is, shaming or needs discipline, or, the other things that sometimes we do as parents, which is not intentional. But if we can come alongside our kids and help them navigate the real struggles in the world, I think that goes a long, long way.
Yeah. And, you're 15, you should know better. It's like,
no. How? My brain is doing these weird things and I don't even know.
John has so much woundedness from hearing those kinds of things of like, what's wrong with you? Or, and so even as an adult, one of his shame lies, his shame triggers, is making mistakes or needing help. And so, oh my gosh, home projects. We were so proud of him the other day when he ordered the wrong chain for his sawmill. And he even said, I'm really proud of myself because I ordered the wrong chain and I didn't beat myself up over it. And it was like, that was such a breakthrough. Yes. Because he does hear those messages of like, you're stupid, why didn't you double check? And, those things. So, yeah, and we have, going through the parent training is going to be great. And we also have resources for youth leaders that parents can use. And these are bite-sized video segments of like, what do I do after my child's looked at porn? Or how do I talk to them about sex without blushing? And then plenty of tools to use with teenagers. So I'm not going to go into the tools right now, but we have all of those resources for you. And the tools to help them are so great. I mean, I do remember giving Kairos the love addiction evaluation and then also helping Waylon use a child-sized faster scale. And I'm telling you, those tools worked so well in explaining some of their behaviors to them. So check out all of the resources we have and reach out if you need, help with any of them. All right. Well, thank you for joining the conversation today. If you can think about it, we should be talking about it. So please send us your questions. We love answering them to unfiltered@puredesire.org. Subscribe and share this episode and leave us a review so more people can find us.